So, welcome everyone for this today's session on the awareness about the plagiarism for research scholars and other faculty members. So, in this session, what we are thinking to cover is detailed guidelines about the plagiarism. So, we'll start with the basic question: what is plagiarism? This is going to be a bit comprehensive one. It would be much more in detail rather than just having a definition about the plagiarism. So it will help you to explore hidden corners of the plagiarism. So generally the plagiarism is nothing but a copying event whenever we copy someone else's ideas or their work or their this intellectual property rights, anything without giving a proper credit to them. That is called plagiarism, right? So generally it's a copying someone else's ideas and presenting them as ours without citing the sources. That's the formal definition of a plagiarism. There are several types of plagiarism that we have to be aware because it comes across multiple forms. There are multiple types, and we're going to cover each and every type in detail. Apart from that, we'll cover a comprehensive guideline how to overcome the plagiarism, what are the consequences of the plagiarism, and everything in much more detail. Right. So there are two major types. First one is the intentional plagiarism and unintentional plagiarism. This intentional plagiarism occurs when we copy purposefully someone's information, text, images, diagrams, pictures, charts, etc. That is known as an intentional plagiarism, and we do not cite them or give the credit or do not acquire the license to reuse that material. That's called intentional plagiarism. Whereas on the other hand, unintentional plagiarism occurs when we are not aware about the writing ethics in research and publications, and we copy and we could miss out on human error, or maybe we use a material, or we use some of the information text and we forget to cite, or maybe any miss out on the human errors. That is called unintentional plagiarism. So generally this intentional plagiarism is also known as a conscious plagiarism, where knowingly we present someone else's ideas or work as ours. We intentionally present someone else's ideas, information, text, diagrams, data, etc., and say that that's ours, right? So that's the intentional plagiarism. Whereas unintentional plagiarism is also known as unconscious plagiarism, where we unknowingly present someone else's ideas or work as ours. So that's the basic difference. Now there are multiple types of intentional plagiarism. First one is a verbatim or direct plagiarism. Second one is paraphrase without citing the sources. Third one is mosaic plagiarism. Then the ghostwriting, self-plagiarism, multi-posting, source plagiarism, inadequate authorship, collusion or unethical research collaborations, undeclared contributions, and translation without citing the sources. We will discuss each type of plagiarism with exercise or with demo in detail in subsequent slides. Whereas on the other hand, there are unintentional plagiarisms which include when we forget to cite a particular source, when we provide incorrect citations by mistake, or it could be a source referencing also, when we forget to quote any material any text information which we have directly used, and we forget to put the quotation marks there, we forget to write the footnotes for certain information about the material what we have referred or used, stitching the sources, or we call it resource citer. So here we cite everything, we refer multiple text information segments and anything, but the entire article or entire document is just the stitching, just the information are stitched from several sources. This is known as stitching the sources or resource citer. We'll look at that also. And incorrect paraphrasing, that is also a type of unintentional plagiarism. So this is a vast comprehensive classification of types of plagiarism that we will look at through. So firstly, we will start with what is intentional plagiarism. So whenever we commit plagiarism with an awareness, even though we are aware about the writing ethics in research and publication, and knowingly we indulge in copying events, that is known as intentional plagiarism. The formal definition is when authors commit intentional plagiarism when they are aware of writing ethics in research and publications, and knowingly indulge in the copying activities. That is called intentional plagiarism. And there are severe consequences of intentional plagiarism that we will take a look one by one. So, first type of intentional plagiarism is verbatim or direct plagiarism. So, in verbatim or direct plagiarism, this is kind of an intentional plagiarism type, and it occurs when we copy the information directly from a source, paste it into our document, and do not cite the original sources. It's sort of copy paste kind of an event, right? So it's exactly we took it, pasted it in our document, and we haven't cited it for n number of reasons, right? And that is with an awareness. If we have forgot this, then we have forgotten that, then it could be a case of unintentional, but intentionally we haven't cited the information, the used information. That is called verbatim plagiarism or a direct plagiarism, which is a part of the intentional plagiarism, right? So here it could be a complete or partial copy also. Let's say we are writing a document, we may copy few lines or maybe few paragraphs, or maybe the partial information is copied. It could be a complete copy also, right? So purposefully, when we copy, including text, images, diagrams, pictures, musics, videos, charts, data, etc., and when we do not cite the sources, or when we do not take a written permission from the respective publisher or license holder or copyrights holder, then we indulge in this kind of direct or verbatim plagiarism, right? So here you can, so when submitting, now this can occur across multiple. So this is mostly, with reference to text, right? So, but this direct plagiarism includes images, diagrams, pictures, music, videos, charts, etc. When it is verbatim plagiarism, it mostly refers to the text copying sort of thing. Okay, so this can occur across multiple things as faculties, right? So we may face this kind of things during the submission of the assignments, during the submissions of the project reports, term papers. No, at multiple instances, students used to copy, right? So this is called a direct plagiarism or verbatim plagiarism. From now, they copy from internet sources, they copy from their friends' work, uh, and whatnot. They have a group, so they copy and just pass on the material. So what are the solutions to this event is, always we have to train them to be original and write in their own words, right? So we have to spread the awareness across the students that they have to be original. Definitely they can refer to the material which is available in a public domain, but they have to be original, and they have to write in their own words. Whenever they paraphrase it, they have to cite it, right? And if they are taking the direct text, they have to put the quotation marks followed by the citations. So this is the awareness that we have to follow. This is the awareness that we have to, spread across the students. So here I'll take one example, one demo, that how this verbatim plagiarism occurs. So here I have prepared a small document, as you can see, and these two segments of text are copied from these two particular sources. And we ran the document through the plagiarism checker, which is Turnitin here. And we can see that it has highlighted the entire copied segment, and I haven't cited them, right? So it's a direct copy, and I haven't cited those sources. And a plagiarism checker has directly highlighted and detected that this information text are copied from this respective sources, number 1 and number 6, right? So this is called verbatim or direct plagiarism. Now, how can we solution to this? How can we overcome from this? So first and foremost solution, what we have said, that we have to be original and write it in our own words. This is the only way to overcome verbatim plagiarism. So here what we have applied a solution is, we paraphrase that information and we cited that. So the entire information which was copied before, that we have paraphrased it. This we have paraphrased it, and then we cited it here, right? And then we cited it here. Uh, if it is a direct copy, we can use the quotation mark and cite it. That is another solution, but for paraphrasing is better than the quoted solution, because every time entire information cannot be quoted. One or few lines is okay. I mean, few lines are okay, but not a huge set of information. So here you can see, we can see that we have paraphrased it and we have cited it. And after that, we have performed the plagiarism check through turn it in, and then it has passed the document without marking anything for a plagiarism. So we can see that entire document, I mean, this entire paragraph is passed through the plagiarism checker, right? So that's the idea. So always we have to paraphrase and then apply the, and then cite the original sources from where we have taken it. Often we paraphrase it, but we do not cite it. That's another type of plagiarism, right? So we intentionally paraphrase it and we do not cite it. See, verbatim is we copy directly and we do not cite. Correct? We copy directly and we do not cite. Here we paraphrase it and intentionally we do not cite for n number of reasons. Right? We paraphrase it and we intentionally do not cite for n number of reasons. So here what we do is we uh, we rewrite the information which is borrowed from the source in our own words, and we do not cite the original sources. This is called paraphrasing without citing the sources, and which is also a part of intentional plagiarism. Okay, so paraphrasing doesn't alter the fact that we have copied from someone else's work, and we must acknowledge the original sources by citing them, right? So there is, I mean, there is no escape that we we can just let it go, right? It's still a plagiarism, right? So, and generally here is a difficult case because the anti-plagiarism software may not be able to detect such kind of plagiarism cases, right? Because it's paraphrased, so it may not be able to detect it, correct? And later, maybe after a year or two or three, the original authors or publishers holding the copyrights, they may demand for ratification for the breach of their copyrights, right? So there could be few penalties, imposed by them if we haven't cited the sources nicely and we have just paraphrased the information, right? So it could occur from, from a single source. We could refer to the single source, paraphrase, and do not cite it, or it could be from multiple sources. It could be a patchwork or mosaic sort of thing, right? So it's kind of a paraphrased from multiple sources, and we have done it. So here you can see the hands-on demo, the same exercise. I'll take it, right? So here I have copied those two directly, but it has, after running through the plagiarism checker, it has detected that these two segments were copied from these two sources. Same exercise I'm taking here. So what I got an idea of this is I don't want to cite it and intentionally, and I want to somehow do not give the credit to the original source. So what I do is I will just paraphrase it and rewrite the information in my own words, and I'll put it here. And after that, I'll run the plagiarism checker. It will not detect any plagiarism here. It will not detect any plagiarism here. It will not highlight it. And there is no citation which I have provided. Still, this is a clear case of plagiarism. This is even more serious because it's an intentional plagiarism. Intentionally, now we can defend that always that we have paraphrased, but we forgot it. So it's a thin line, but we know what we stand for, right? So this is an intentional plagiarism case here. So the information has been paraphrased, but I haven't cited it, correct? So that's called the paraphrasing without citing the sources. Solution to this is always cite it, right? That's the only solution here is. So we have to be citing all the sources. So paraphrasing followed by the citations, right? Whatever the information we want to reuse from any material, we have to paraphrase it in our own words and then cite them. This is the best possible solution that we have. And the next part of the plagiarism, of the intentional plagiarism, is called mosaic plagiarism, right? So mosaic plagiarism is known as kind of an assembly of the short information text segments from several sources without citing them. So I can take, let's say, 5, 6, or 7, 8 research papers. I can just compile that information and just patch it together and just put it in my words. I can paraphrase or rephrase those sentences without acknowledging the original sources, and put it in my word, and then I can just try to publish it. So that's called mosaic plagiarism, right? So, but that is also intentional and unethical in the process of research and publication. So always we have to cite the sources. Paraphrasing followed by citing the sources is mandatory in any kind of publication, right? Otherwise we may face consequences in future. Maybe not today, maybe not after a year, maybe not after a 2 year, but maybe after 3, 4, 5 years. We do not know when it comes through, right? So that we will see what kind of consequences we face because of the plagiarism, that we will see, correct? So listing all the sources in the reference list is not sufficient. We must cite them no, from where we have borrowed. So sometimes what we do, we patch all the informations together, a mosaic sort of thing, and then we just list out all the sources at the end. We say we have listed all the sources, but that's not sufficient. That's not sufficient. We have to cite all the sources whenever it is required, right? Whenever it is required. So uh, one exercise I will put it here. So you can see there are multiple text segments in this current paper. I've copied through multiple sources, right? So you can see all the source numbers 2, 3, 1, 4, right? All these are sources from where this entire, this, those, that page has been copied. The multiple text segments are copied from the respective sources. And then later we ran through the Turnitin plagiarism checker, and we can see that it has highlighted all the copied information. And generally, I prefer not to, it was intentional and I just want to patch it. I did not want to cite it, maybe because of a lack of time, or maybe because of a number of reasons, or correct. So you can see that this is a clear case of mosaic plagiarism or patch writing. Now, how to overcome this is, we always have to design a novel problem solution, and we have to express our ideas into our own words, correct? And always we have to paraphrase and cite the sources. And if we are using any direct information, we have to use the quotation marks and cite them, right? So here you can see I have rewritten all the segments here very nicely and paraphrased them, and then I have cited all the sources from where I took that information, right? So all the text segments, the respective sources I have cited very nicely here, and the other things, uh, the paraphrasing I have performed in such a way so that, and after that I ran through the plagiarism checker. It has clearly passed my document without marking for a plagiarism, right? Uh, the another important type of plagiarism is ghostwriting. Another important type of plagiarism is ghostwriting. So generally, ghostwriting is definitely a type of intentional plagiarism where we purchase the article written by someone who agrees not to be included as an author, and who agrees to just take the commercial gains or maybe any other form of gain for them, which they feel as they feel suitable, right? So generally this occurs when we want to publish many papers in a shorter time to meet maybe to meet the institutional criteria, yearly institutional criteria, or correct. So we have to submit the papers or publish the papers for academic degrees, or any purpose, to for a peer pressure or for promotion, or whatnot, and number of reasons. So this kind of things are known as ghost writing, and this is highly unethical, which is also a part of intentional plagiarism. Sometimes it is difficult to detect this because the original author, he took the commercial gain, so he's not going to put a claim on it. So it's a thin line. It's kind of a self awareness that we should not do this because it's unethical in research and publication process, right? Students often used to do this when we ask them to submit an assignment, project, term papers, or research articles. They purchase the written material by someone, maybe support agency, or maybe assignment helping agency, or publication helping agency, or anywhere. They purchase from them and then they submit it, right? That is called again a ghost writing. That is also part of intentional plagiarism, correct? Now, the next important type of the plagiarism is self-plagiarism. Next important type of the plagiarism is called self-plagiarism. Now, here in the self-plagiarism occurs when we often copy the content from our previously published articles, books, chapters, project proposals, term papers, reports, etc., and present the similar or same information as new without acknowledging our previous work, or without modifying it, or without putting any substantially added new contribution there, right? Even we do not take, sometimes we often forget to take the license for a reuse from the respective publisher, because the moment when we publish the paper with a publisher, right, and if it is not in an open access, the copyrights will be passed to the publisher, and he or she holds that, publisher respective publisher holds the copyrights, right? So we have to take a written approval from them before we reuse our own material also. There is a fair usage policy that we have to follow. We can reuse some of the part, which is fine, but we have to be careful. It should not be the ideal copy or something like that. Right? And submitting, so there is another type. When, let's say, a PhD student is at the end or nearing the completion of their degree, so what they try to do is submit one paper to multiple journals and conferences to get a quick response. Now that is highly unethical, because they'll put one paper to multiple journals. They have their own plagiarism checkers in their database, so it will be detected very easily, and then there could be other consequences, right? So that's one. Framing multiple articles from a single paper by means of minor changes. So let's say we got one paper prepared, and then what we do a little bit of minor tweak arounds, and then we try to create multiple articles and put them for the publications. Put them for the publication. So this is also part of the self-plagiarism. Submitting same project proposals to multiple funding agencies. Now, this is something for the faculties, right? We have we have been facing pressure to hunt the grants from the funding agencies, the externally funded projects. So what we do, we create one project proposal and submit to multiple funding agencies. Now, that is also unethical. Now we can always argue that funding agency after 3 months doesn't reply to us, whether they're going to pass us or not through that project. So we can, but in that case, always we can write them an email with one gentle reminder, and if they don't reply back, then we can use the same proposal for for other funding agencies. But generally, it could be done in 6 months or later duration. 6 months or later duration, right? So that's one. Sometimes students submit same project report or term paper assignments to multiple courses when there are similar contents. It occurs mainly, often it occurs with PG courses, not with the UG courses. PG courses, there could be a substantial overlap in multiple courses when the courses are designed from the research perspective point of view. So what happens that some of the segments of multiple courses may get maybe 10 or 20% of overlap, and then if the assignment comes and if they have submitted in other course, they'll come back with the same assignment, put it here also. So that's one kind of self plagiarism also, right? So now one case study that I present here for a self plagiarism is, let's say I got one published paper, which is the original published paper here, right? And I haven't done any substantial revisions or new contributions are added in this particular paper. Now, just minor changes I have performed, minor tweak arounds I have performed, and then I just placed it into another document. I just placed it into another, just minor tweak arounds, and then I just placed it for a new publication. Now, this is called a self-plagiarism, which is highly unethical. We cannot do that. That should be at least 60%. So let's say if we have published a paper in a conference, and if we extend it to a journal, that should be at least 60 to 70% new contribution in that extended version of a conference paper, which is going to the journal, right? So that should be the ideal case. Now, multi-posting, when to get a quick response, the authors will submit one paper to multiple journals. So let's say this paper which I have prepared here for a demo, I'm putting it through a journal number 1, journal number 2, journal number 3 for getting a quick response, because in a hope that, let's say, out of 3, 1 will accept it, right? So let's say if I do a single posting, I'll upload it to journal 1, it will take 2 to 3 months. Then I will say, no, your paper is rejected. So I have to start looking I update the comments and put it to journal 2. It will take another 2-3 months. Then it will say, no, your paper is rejected. Then I'll put it to journal number 3. Then it will say, yes, accepted, right? So it will take around 6 to 8 months to get this through. Not to get a quick response, authors will put one paper simultaneously across these 3 journals. Now, which is highly unethical, right? So if it is caught, then there could be a ban coming from the publishers. They will not allow to upload the papers in future. So this is something which we have to be careful. They have their journals or publishers, they have their plagiarism and multi-posting checker in their database. Generally, they are smarter even to detect this kind of cases. And with the publishers such as IEEE, they are even they have a strict copyrights and this strict multi-posting policy. So right, so this we have to be aware. Consequently, if you fail to adhere that policy, we may be blacklisted and they may bar us from the future submissions, right? So let's say if a place, where the expectation is we gotta publish IEEE journals, right? And let's say if IEEE journal put a ban for 5 years, correct? So everything will be collapsed, and the promotions would be delayed, or maybe PhD degree would be delayed, or professional growth would be delayed, right? So these are the consequences that we have to be very careful. We have to be aware, and we have to be very careful with it, right? Same thing. One project proposal is submitted to multiple funding agencies. Same thing will happen here also. They have the multi-posting checker, or correct reviewers are smart enough to quickly identify that this is submitted across multiple funding agencies, right? And then could be possible that they may blacklist and bear from the future submissions, and they may not allow the funding. And also they may write an email to our organization to take further actions too, right? So that we will see soon. Another type of multi-posting is, let's say I got one bigger paper, right? I just tweak around and I do a minor version, a minor changes, and I make it a one version, second version, and third version by minor changes, and just I put them smaller versions, or maybe with minor tweak arounds, I put them across different journals in the hope of that at least one would be selected, right? That is also unethical. There should be substantial percentage of new contributions should be added in the each version of the paper, correct? So this were the cases of self plagiarism. Now we look at the source plagiarism. We look at the source plagiarism. What does that mean? Now there are two types of source plagiarism. One is, the first one is a bit slightly funny, so we'll start with that. Second one is like when that we will discuss in unintentional. See, this is intentional. So one type of source plagiarism, this is intentional, we'll discuss here. Another is the same type with a different flavor, that is in the unintentional part of the plagiarism, that we will discuss in the later part of the presentation. So the source plagiarism, if you look at the source plagiarism, generally this is done by the beginners, not by the experienced researchers. Generally this would be done by the beginners. So when we give a writing project or paper writing to maybe undergrads or PG students, maybe first year MTech or second year MTech students, as an assignment or somewhere, what they'll do is they'll call, they don't care about the references. They say, what is this list, right? It's not of any use. I have written the things. So just to fill the list of references, what they do, they go to a source paper, copy the entire list of references and put them in that paper without citing, without cross-referencing anything. So references are copied from any article randomly without citing or without cross-referencing. Generally, beginners used to do that. The experienced researchers won't do that. Maybe even I wasn't aware when I started my undergraduation, or maybe that kind of. So slowly we build the understanding about this. So beginners, they often copy the references from any published article and stuff them in their bibliography without any relevance and citing. So here you can see this is a source paper, and just to fill in the list of references, I've copied all the references without any relevance and citing, and I place them in my list. This is called source referencing. The next part is called inadequate authorship. In this inadequate authorship, that means this is also a part of intentional plagiarism. We frame a collaborative network. Definitely, see, joint works and collaborations are always appreciated. We should help each other in enhancing the quality of the work, enhancing the English quality, or maybe technical glitches. We can help each other to rectify them. We can help to gain the quality of the paper to the next level. Those all are the positive lines of collaborations and joint works, which are always advisable. But inadequate authorship means what? See, let's say I have a collaboration with someone, and it is important to disclose all the names of the collaborators, or acknowledge all the respective people, those who have helped, to avoid the conflict of interests, right? So let's say if there are any joint work performed through the collaboration, right? So there should be co-authorships. and it is very common in academic and industrial research, right? So we cannot just so we cannot just remove our collaborator's name, and we cannot just publish under a solo authorship. Correct. So we cannot just put the paper by removing our co-authors. We have to know, since they have contributed and helped us to gain the help us to bring the paper at a next level. We must either we must acknowledge them, or if their contribution is sizable, we must put them as a co-author, right? So this is what it is. So inadequate authorship is kind of when we eliminate our co-authors, or when we do not acknowledge them, taking help from them. These all are the instances which are unethical in research and publications, right? Furthermore, there is another flavor of this is uh, we designate additional co-authors without any significant contributions to our articles, or if we ask someone to put our names as a co-author in someone else's article without even my contribution, right? This is also unethical. That's another flavor. When we force someone to include our name in their article without any contribution, that is also unethical. When we include someone whose contribution is next to zero, I mean, definitely we can contribute and include them. That's called a collaboration, right? But the contribution is zero, and then when we include them for other gains, that is also unethical. Definitely we can say, can you help us to increase the quality or raise the quality of our article? Please take a look. What do you think? Are there any claims? Are there any, what do you think, are there any limited, uh, scope for further improvement? And that person help us, guide us. That is another thing. That's a positive flavor of the collaboration. But just putting the name across the articles for each other, that is called inadequate authorship, or something which can ring it. So this is one use case. So see, this paper, if I'm writing, there could be there are potential collaborators, and I have removed them. Now, generally, some of the organizations, they have a credit system. So let's say one research paper, there are total 4 credits. I mean, numbers will depend based on the system. There are total 4 credits, right? And for a promotion, or maybe for something, they need at least 30 credits. So let's say if there are collaborators, those credits are going to be distributed. So let's say I got 4 credits. If I put a collaborator here, I'm going to get only 2 credits. He's going to get another 2 credits, right? So at the end, I'll be short for my credits for a promotion. Now, this will tempt me to remove my collaborator's name and grab the entire credit for a paper, right? Now, that's unethical, because we cannot do that just for a sake of satisfying the credits. That's one use case of inadequate authorship. Now, second thing is, let's say for some sort of adding favorable authors for mutual benefits or commercial gain or anything, right? Let's say this is the paper's aim, that when it was written by me or maybe my students, and I add few more authors, not just for out of the collaboration, but just for whatnot, n number of reasons. That is also unethical. Definitely collaboration should be there, and then we can collab with them, and then we can get the paper's quality to the next level, ask them for the suggestions. That's another thing. That's a positive one. We should always do that. But just adding them because they could be my boss, he could be my HOD, so I have to just keep him happy. So I'll put his name in my paper. So, so this kind of things, or maybe any other thing, right? So he wouldn't stop my promotion, or this kind of things are unethical, right? So this is just, we have to be aware of it. So, I mean, there is a thin line. No one can detect these things very easily, but we have to be aware of these things, and we have to be maintaining the proper ethics what are expected in research and collaborations. Now the next one is the collusion. Now this is something also interesting. This is also an extension of the previous one only. Here, unethical group has been formed. Now it could be across the students, it could be across the researchers. So let's take the students first, because this is what we face daily as a teacher, right? So they have unethical collaboration. So when we drop an assignment, they have a group, right? So one guy will do the assignment, and they'll just spread it across the entire group. So everyone will copy from them. That's the trouble. So they allow others to copy assignments, term papers, project reports, etc. from their work. This is highly unethical. Right? And it's very difficult to detect them. It takes a lot of time to detect that. But by this time, we got many tools such as Turnitin or other code checker. I mean, even we can check the plagiarism for a program also, right? there is a code plagiarism checker. If someone copies the logic, that code plagiarism checker will highlight the copied code, that this part of the code is copied across the students. That kind of things are also available. So with the technology, with the help of technology, now we can easily do that. Now definitely see constructive collaborators, constructive collaborations are always advisable, and we should always do that. uh, Students should work jointly to enhance their academic performance and other things. However, such as, let's say, assignments, exams, written works, they need to be graded individually. So the problem comes when they copy, right? So whenever the activities results in collaboration activities result in copying events, then that's called, something across this particular network, that's called something collusion or unethical collaboration for copy. Now this occurs for researchers also, where collusion occurs when a group of people frame or establish an unethical research collaboration network where they include each others as co-authors just to increase the citation counts, or maybe just to increase the paper counts. I mean, they can work together. That is a different line that we are not talking, that they should work together and enhance the quality of a research work. That is fine. But sometimes they just pad the authors for increase the citation counts. Now, if one paper is going, we cite our, no, other collaborators' paper just to benefit them, to increase citation count for them, or maybe we include their names in our paper, right, without any relevance. All these things. There is one more interesting flavor of this. We send the PhD thesis to the favorable examiners just to kick out our PhD students. So that PhD students will get through, and we get a quick promotion also. So that is also one flavor. This is also unethical. Definitely, we should send it to the known examiners, but at least that examiner should give us substantial comments for the improvement, and then students also should hold value in the thesis, right? So this is also called a collusion or collaborative network, which is unethical here, right? So one must understand the difference between collaboration and collusion. So this is also coming as a part of the intentional plagiarism. Next part is translation and plagiarism. This often, I mean, not frequently occurs, but we should be just build the awareness around it. So let's say when we take any work, right, which is published in any other language, and we just convert them into another language, we just translate them into a different language, and we publish it, and we do not cite the original source, right? So that's called the translation and plagiarism. Translation followed by the plagiarism, correct? So we must acknowledge the original source and we have to reference it, right? Without this, will still a plagiarism, correct? Now the next session, next subpart of this one is unintentional plagiarism. So in unintentional plagiarism, there are 6 types. There are 6 major types of unintentional plagiarism. So let's begin with what is unintentional plagiarism. So this unintentional plagiarism occurs when authors commit unintentional plagiarism when they are unaware of writing ethics in research and publications, or they miss out on human errors. So generally this occurs with the beginners. Uh, Often they are not aware about the writing ethics, and they just miss out on a human error. I mean, we'll see each and every type here, right? So it is also known as unconscious plagiarism, where unknowingly they present someone else's ideas or work as theirs, and they forget to cite, or they forget to quote, or just kind of just out of uh, this uh, human errors or something else, right? So there are 6 major types that we would be discussing, such as, let's say, incorrect or misleading citations, which is also known as source referencing. Now, incorrect or misleading citations, that is the another part of the source referencing. Is the first one we have seen that. This is another one. We will see each in detail. Second one is when we forget to cite. Next one is when we forget to quote and cite. See, when we use a direct copy information text, we have to quote and cite, right? Only quotation is not sufficient. Only citation is not sufficient. We have to quote and cite. We forget to write the footnotes if we want to supply a specific information about the material. Let's say a specific page numbers, or specific paragraph number, or maybe any specific information about the material, that we have to put that on a footnote. If you forget to put a footnote, resourceful citer or stitching the sources is also a part of unintentional plagiarism. Incorrect paraphrasing, that is also kind of unintentional plagiarism, when we change the meaning of the original information. Let's take each and every one one by one, and then let's take a look with sort of a hands-on demo sort of thing. Right, so you can see uh, here, whenever we're citing incorrectly, so let's say we took the information from X source and we cite Y source by mistake, correct? So it's a false citation, or misleading citations, correct? Where the original source cannot be located. I mean, kind of its information is not complete and we cannot reach the original source. Sometimes if we are giving URL, it's not reachable, or maybe the original uh, source is not reachable, or the paper is not reachable, or insufficient details such as, let's say, we forgot to write the volume number, issue number, page numbers, or year or month, or maybe the title is incorrect, or journal's name is incorrect, or something like that, right? So all these are incorrect citations. So we have to be very careful and cross-check each and every minute detail in the citation when we publish. And there shouldn't be a single miss. It takes a lot of time. Let it take whatever it takes. We should do, but there shouldn't be a single miss. Now this can come up with multiple reviews with multiple self reviews, multiple reviews with the supervisor, or maybe collaborators, or maybe other departmental colleagues. They can take a look, and we can split the workload and enhance the quality. That is always possible, right? Now this is an example when we forget to cite. Now here you can see, I mean, there is a thin line between, this can be intentional, this can be unintentional also. I mean, there is a thin line. It's difficult to, highlight it, that whether it's intentional or unintentional. But if the copied percentage is lesser, then generally it would be considered as an unintentional one. Let's say I'm copying, but let's say the percentage is below 20%. So 20%, then it could be considered as an unintentional plagiarism case. If it is, let's say, 50, 60, 70%, then it says, I wanted to copy it and I did it intentionally, correct? So here you can see this information is copied. So I have paraphrased it from the following source. This is a particular source. From that, I borrowed this information. I paraphrased in my words, and I forgot to cite the source unintentionally. This is called unintentional plagiarism, when we forgot to cite the source, right? Now here the plagiarism checker will not be able to identify this form of plagiarism because the information text is not matching. However, this is still called a plagiarism. We must cite it whenever we use any information from anywhere. Right? The next one is when we directly copy a particular information text, then only citation will not be sufficient. We must put that in the quotation mark, and then we cite them. So quotation mark is mandatory when we are directly taking maybe few lines from any published literature. Then we have to put them across the quotation marks, and then we have to cite them, right? So this is, you can see one example where this three line, I mean this information segment is copied from this particular source. I cited nicely, but I forgot to place the quotation marks, right? This is still called a plagiarism because we have to put the quotation marks here. Now, this is how it will look like. We quote it and cite it, then there won't be a trouble. This will definitely be marked by the plagiarism tool, plagiarism checker, but so far we have quoted that, then we can claim that we have quoted the information, cited it, so it can be exempted from the from counting the plagiarism. I mean, plagiarism checker will definitely mark this. I don't know whether there is an option to exclude the quoted material or not in the Turnitin tool, or maybe any other tool. Maybe we can look for that. But this won't be the case of plagiarism if we are quoting the material followed by the citation. Let's say here I have forgotten to write the footnotes about the specific information on the location of the source material, right? I have cited the source nicely from where the information segments are borrowed, but I forgot to include the footnotes about the specific information on the location of the source material. Now, this is called forgotten footnotes, which is also a part of unintentional work. But this is not something frequently observed, correct? Frequently observed cases are either we forget to cite, or maybe we forget to, or we have incorrect references where we forgot to supply sufficient information, right? Now, this is another one which is called resourceful citer, or stitching the sources together, right? So the resourceful citer, or stitching the sources together. Here, what authors do is they paraphrase the original information, use the quotation marks, cite all the sources exactly. They don't miss anything. If they have to paraphrase it, they paraphrase it and cite it. If they've copied direct text, they put the quotation marks and cite them. Everything is perfect. But the question is, the presented material lacks in the novelty. There is no substantial new contribution. The presented article is just a collection of the existing works, and it doesn't contain any original work. Now, that's called stitching the sources or resourceful citer. Now, it's difficult to identify this form of plagiarism because everything is paraphrased, cited well, and I mean, it looks like a well presented article or well researched article. So sometimes it's not going to be checked by the plagiarism tool. I mean, it won't mark it because it's well paraphrased. So it's often challenging to identify this form of plagiarism because it looks like any other well researched article. Correct. So the next one is the incorrect paraphrasing, right? So incorrect paraphrasing. Now, this is something interesting when authors have cited all the paraphrased information. Right? So see, we took the information segment from somewhere, we paraphrased, we cited, but in the course of rewriting phase, by mistake, we altered the actual meaning of the original information. See, we can rewrite it in our own words, paraphrase it, but we cannot change the original meaning of the information which has been presented. So this is called incorrect paraphrasing, right? Incorrect paraphrasing is also considered as an accidental or unintentional plagiarism because this may occur on the human errors, and there are not severe consequences of this. This can be revised and overcome, but we have to be aware of it. And when we rewrite or paraphrase any information, we cannot change the meaning of the original information. We have to double check everything that original meaning remains intact and information is rewritten in our own words, followed by the citation. Correct? So sometimes, now this is not the case with the experienced researchers. This would be mostly with the undergrads or MTech students or MS students. They'll copy from the Wikipedia. And they think that it's a common mistake to think that we don't have to reference Wikipedia as it is in a public domain, right? And that's not true because Wikipedia accumulates all the information segments and cite them nicely at the bottom. So we cannot just copy from the Wikipedia and just put it in our own words. So we have to go through that particular source and cite that which is cited by the Wikipedia, right? So we have to be careful. It's someone else's work and it must be referenced, right? So that's why the Wikipedia is also a serious. Is also it can also be a source of plagiarism here. Generally, people will, undergrad students or PG students generally fall in this trap, and then they say that generally they fall in that trap, and then they'll say that I should be copying. Any question do you want me to take in between? There is a Amrita ma'am has raised the hand. Okay. If there are no more questions, then
Yes, sir.
definitely
Actually, I wanted to ask whether we can cite the presentations that are available online. How do we cite those? Because there are many times presentations available on different topics, and we want to cite those particular things in our
yeah.
research paper. How to cite that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, madam. So, see, what is my understanding about the presentation is that I will explain you. I mean, we have a dedicated segment here about that, but since you have asked, I will address them here. So, see, Generally, any presentation we make, we refer to the sources. The presentation doesn't come out of nowhere, right? So either we refer to the books, either we refer to the research papers, or either we refer to somewhere else. So we have to see that presentation made, what are the sources of that presentation. I mean, each and see, if you look at it, my this is the current presentation, ma'am, right, which I'm presenting right now. Do you see at the bottom a reference, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So you cannot cite my presentation saying that this was presented by Dr. Rahul Pandya in your paper or somewhere. What you have to do is you have to cite this reference. Now this
Okay.
is the mature state. Yeah. Now this is the mature state of the presentation. Now you may find slides without any citing, without any citations. Now see, that's a
Right.
difficulty
The
because
same author is having the research paper, so maybe that research paper is the right
yeah,
source for the
yeah,
same.
yeah. So we cannot cite the presentation, ma'am, because the presentation has the sources. Those sources we have to go and cite. I mean, I have
Got
a
it, sir.
dedicated segment on this. I have a dedicated segment on this. But that's an excellent question which you brought, ma'am. Generally, we have a misunderstanding on it, and we may fall in a trap sometimes. I mean, so far we, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's even we committed that mistake many times, often in the past, right? So we thought, how should we deal with? So see, any slide, if I go anywhere, there would be a source at the bottom, and mostly I use open sources, right? I mean, it's under Creative Commons CC, Creative Commons CC by 4.0 license, so it can be referred by anyone. It's kind of a public domain source, right? So we will take a look now. See the common excuses of the plagiarism what we face, so that I have covered up here. So generally the common reasons behind the plagiarism is most commonly the deadline or lack of time. The second one, if exam period is nearby and they have to submit the assignment, term papers, students, right? They have to submit the assignments, term papers, maybe the research article, whatnot. Then they attempt to get copied and they start copying. Now, third one is lack of awareness and carelessness. They're not aware and they're not sensitized. Second thing, either they have a careless nature, and sometimes they just, they're lazy and they just get tempted to copy and paste. Sometimes they submit the thesis in a hurry, right? There's a lot of, there are a lot of things to do, so they just say, okay, fine, just copy a few segments, it'll be fine. Then there's a trouble, right? Because most of the okay, just go back. Most of the universities, they have these restrictions that they have to come up with certain plagiarism percentage, right? So let's say if thesis goes about 20%, they will reject it. If thesis goes about 20%, they will reject it, right? So that's a trouble. So sometimes they just go with they are pressurized by others. So let's say other colleagues are publishing a lot of papers and we are not, right? So we have to publish the paper. So we start thinking the workarounds and we commit any of this plagiarism, what we just discussed, right? There are many types we have just discussed, so any of that can be. So some of the common excuses from the students, see, we are faculties, most of them are faculties here. We have to be aware of this because sometimes students will screw us up, correct? So because if we upload it to somewhere and then the publisher will put a copyright strike, or the original author will put a copyright strike, after 3 4 5 years the students will go and pass out, and then the ultimate victim would be the faculty member. So we have to just be careful with it, right? So we shouldn't be that much of, gentle with the students in this particular aspect, because the students will come and go every year. So first and foremost thing, they say, I don't know how to cite. I mean, that's not the argument they should. When they say we have to make them go through some sort of training materials, we should give this kind of recordings. This video is also recorded, right? So this kind of recorded materials should be passed to them. Uh, they say everyone is copying, so I also did. I mean, so what, right? So, so this is something funny. Everyone does it, so I did. I mean, so what? And this shouldn't. Everyone does it, so we did it. So that's the another argument which I face with my students. So Then they say, I don't know how to write a research paper, so I just copy it from somewhere. I mean, this is kind of another funny argument which suddenly they gave. So we have to be we get ready with these common questions which we face. The next one is says I didn't get enough time, so I copied and did not cite. So this is also another one. Correct. So sometimes they copy just from the online materials, just like maybe some PPDs or maybe Wikipedias or some electronic sites, website. I mean blog sites and anywhere. So they say I copy from online material and from the online material, and there was no author. I mean, so what? Do not refer to those kind of unauthenticated sources, right? You refer to the research papers. They'll say we don't understand them. So, so that's another thing, right? So, I mean, why should we refer to the unauthenticated sources? There are some sort of authenticated sources, such as let's say journal papers or maybe authenticated white papers or video or lecture materials which can be which have cited sources nicely, such as this lecture. Everything is cited here. So let's say if I use this particular image, I have cited the image source also from where I took this image. Everything is clear here. So you look at, this is my image source, from this image is taken. That kind of thing is generally expected. Any credit, anything is on my presentation is not mine, it should be cited. Correct. I did not record the original information sources and I did not cite them. This is something advanced level. It may happen with an advanced researcher. Sometimes what happens that they are writing a review paper or maybe they're too much into the research and writing. They may forget to write the sources, which is fine. We can figure it out in draft 2 or draft 3 version of editing, which is fine. But sometimes, but this is a matured argument. Sometimes they said I really forgot to note down a particular source and I forgot it. So that's okay. We can work out on it. Right? So students generally they commit plagiarism because of the poor writing skills. Sometimes they got a fear of failure or discrimination, etc. Right? So because of that, also they fail to cite it. Sometimes, no, always, not sometimes, always there is a demand of publications for such as let's say PhD degree, right? So they there may be 2 SCI papers they have to publish, correct, for a demand, for PhD degree. So that may tempt them to do some sort of unethical practices. If we come to the individual professionals, they also commit plagiarism because of the peer pressure. Other colleagues are publishing a lot, we are not able to publish. There is a difference in the department, right? That other guys are publishing a lot and we're not, right? So now then there's a trouble, peer pressure. So because of that, we start doing the unethical things, which will lead to the plagiarism. Desire to be successful in a shorter duration for promotion, right? So this is another bottleneck. We have to give the papers for a promotion, maybe 3 papers, 5 papers, or something like that, right? Every cycle of the promotion, increase publication and citation counts. All these things are temptation, which will lead us to the uh, plagiarism. Now there are other things such as institutional priority. Institutional priorities, that means they will force us to win the research grants. External funding should come. Now here there is a trouble because in that course we may commit plagiarism. Now, second one is NIRF ranking, or maybe no ranking, national ranking or international ranking, or whatever the name we say, global ranking or something. In that course, also, we will be forced to publish a lot of papers consistently, and then we may tempt to do the unethical things, and we may. So these are the things which we are summarizing for an awareness. We're not saying we are doing this, but we are saying we should be aware of this, right? So increase the institutional ranking through the research activities. Sometimes departmental pressure to improve the academic and research performance. So let's say if you're lagging behind the other colleagues, then sometimes we may get a departmental pressure to improve our academic and research performance. Now this is good in a positive direction, that we can improve our weaknesses and overcome and then put other efforts in the direction of publishing. But if we go and commit the unethical practices, then it goes towards the plagiarism. Establish international collaborations. Sometimes it's not a direct cause but indirect cause, right? So how? Because I mean, someone may disagree with this, but sometimes it may lead us to the plagiarism. We have to build the paper so that we can go and collaborate with this agencies, because this agency says that you have a track record, then and only then we'll collaborate with you, otherwise we won't. So we have to build a track record. So those kind of things. Aim of publishing in prestigious journals and conferences, right? So a lot of pressure to publish the paper in prestigious journals and conferences. But believe me, these prestigious journals, these guys are very smart and they detect it very quickly, and then they will eliminate a paper also and other things. Sometimes the publishers, if they do not have high quality review process, that will also lead to the plagiarism. Let's say some of the publishers are very keen to publish very quickly to raise the impact factor or to increase the visibility, citation counts, and whatnot. Scores are there, right? Uh, so they don't have an efficient review process, inefficient review process. Because of that, or maybe the competition among the journals to publish more articles. Because of that, they always lose the articles in a low quality review process, and then they may pass the articles which are plagiarized and publish them, right? Subsequently, it can be a trouble for authors also. So these are some of the uh, excuses or reasons of the plagiarism. Now we will see what are the consequences of the plagiarism, right? So this is something very important which we have to see. The consequences of the plagiarism, some of the reasons which we have already discussed, such as deadline, exam period, thesis submission in hurry, peer pressure, and other things. But based on this, depending on the severity, the penalty would be decided, right? What kind of plagiarism it is, and whether it's intentional or unintentional, penalty would be decided. Generally, if it is intentional, mild consequences will be there, such as, let's say, if we have just copied the text little bit somewhere, or if it's a self plagiarism case out of human error or maybe accidental plagiarism. In that cases, publisher may ask an apology letter or an explanation. It could be an explanation also, an apology letter, or they may ask us to correct it, submit the revised draft. Minor consequence, right? Mild consequence. Now, sometimes there could be a severe occurrences of plagiarism, right? So, such as, let's say, copyright violations. We are copying from the patents, or maybe we are copying some sort of figures from some papers and then putting into our. So let's say, so this figures, right? So I have copied from this particular sources, right? I mean, see here you can see the copied image pixel bay, right? So I have taken from this particular source here, this figure. This both the figures I have taken from here, this and this one is from here. Now both the figures are under CC by 4.0. None of them are in copywriting. Copyright. None of them are copyrighted. I mean, attributes, I have to mention them here, but both of them are coming under CC by 4.0. So let's say if a image or figure is published under some different licensing scheme, which is not under a public domain, and the copyright holder, which is a publisher here, and if you use that image without taking a license approval or without paying the reusage charge for an image or figure, then we are going to get a copyright strike for a violation, right? Now this is called a stealing of idea. Unknowingly, knowingly, doesn't matter, right? So in that case, we'll be facing severe consequences. Now some sort of severe copying from or duplications, right? So maybe if you just directly copy the entire paper, put it into R, or maybe 50-60% of it and copy, these things are serious, and we may face serious consequences of the plagiarism here, such as expulsion from the institute if copyright if the that copyright holder has reported the case to the institute, right? We may get an expulsion from the institute, or maybe the student get an expulsion from the institute if he's a PhD student and his material is or thesis is copied. I have seen the cases where students submitting the PhD thesis, and it comes saying that it's a copyrighted, I mean it's copied from here and here and here, resubmit the entire thesis, correct? Or it can occur during the viva also, when someone will come and say this is a copied material, and then redo the things. So this kind of things can happen. Authors may be blacklisted by the publishers, and they may be barred from the future submissions of the articles. Now this looks a bit lighter, but it's not, because think about a situation. Let's say you got 5 journals where your organization is asking you to publish the papers, and if those 5 journals they may ban us, then the entire professional growth will collapse, right? Because it depends, what's our situation is, right? So that kind of thing may happen. Sometimes they may just go light and they may ask us to withdraw the article or just retract it or maybe something. Uh, Sometimes what happens that if there is an alumni, let's say we were submitting a thesis for PhD, and after 5 years, uh, copyrights strike came up, or maybe after 2 3 years copyright strike came up, then they may cancel the degree also for an alumni. So that kind of thing also can occur in future. So we have to be very clear. But this is a serious case, not this is under the serious case of plagiarism, not in accidental or in unintentional cases where we might have forgot or something out of human error occurs. Then this won't be the case of penalty. Minor consequence can occur, but this is for a serious copying of the material. We may get firing from a job if you copy, let's say, copyrighted material, such as, let's say, if we are working in the industry, um, if we pass on the copy of our current design to the other competitive industries, this is kind of a copyright disclosure right violation, and then we may get fired from a job also. There could be some sort of criminal charges also for the violation of non-disclosure agreement, other things, right? Now, we'll see the few cases where students used to commit the plagiarism. Mostly the students commit the plagiarism when submitting the assignments, term papers, reports, and research papers, whatnot, right? So generally they copy from their friends' work, partially or completely. Now, copying, they can also copy from the previously submitted assignment to the new assignment in the same or other course, right? So generally they can copy during the research papers, theses, uh, framing, etc., etc. So generally, the copying can occur from the electronic sources, research papers, books, journals, etc. So these are the sources of the uh, copying copies, right? So in this case, university may consider uh, the reported plagiarism cases as a severe offense, and it can go through the process of it can be reported to the disciplinary action committee, and then disciplinary action committee, generally the DAC proceedings, will decide whether what kind of penalty should be there. If it is intentional, uh, then they may award a large penalty, such as, I mean, let's say it can go with a warning also if it's a first time reported case. They may degrade the current grade also, or they may demote also, right? They may award a fail grade also. Now there are different consequences for the faculties. We will discuss them also. Okay, they may suspend for a semester from the institute. They may expel it, right? And they may penalize even alumni by canceling their degrees, right? So it could be a loss of degree. It could be a loss of job also. They may uh, inform the current employer of the alumni, and then they say that, okay, that so and so person is caught in the plagiarism cases, and then he may lose the job also because of the incorrect activities, right? Let's say some of the intellectual property rights, IPRs, such as, let's say, patents and anything. If we The intellectual property rights, generally they are protected through the copyrights law, right? And there are the breach of copyright acts will directly result in legal consequences, right? So the original authors holding the copyrights, they may claim their IPRs, and they may demand ratification for the breach of the copyrights, right? There could be some sort of minor, mild or severe consequences based on whether it's accidental or intentional. So sometimes they ask for the apology letter. Sometimes they ask for apology letter with a financial penalty. If there was a commercial activity, the compensation has to be paid. The entire profit has to be transferred, or from the commercial activities which has been gained, or maybe the partial of that has to be transferred for a commercial gain. Sometimes there could be severe cases, losing the current job, or future jobs may be denied, or maybe the authors could be banned from publishing future papers or other things. There could be legal proceedings followed by the imprisonments, right? This is also possible. Now, some of the plagiarism offenses, we will discuss about them. So let's say plagiarism occurs in the following instances without citing the sources. Let's say when students copy from the available sources during the following submissions, such as assignments, lab reports, term papers, project reports, research articles, dissertation theses. It could be a complete or partial copy from the internet sources. It could be the usage of someone else's content without a written consent. We have to take the written consent, specifically when we use image, graph, picture, chart, graphics, music, video, anything, any multimedia. We have to take a written permission license from the copyright holder, right? Some of the academic misconducts, such as, let's say, misusage of the research data. When we have a specific collaboration with someone, we remove some of the names, we add new names, or we do not acknowledge them, this kind of things. Purchase of any pre-written material, uh, that can also be considered as a plagiarism. Publishing a paper, book, chapter, paper, book, or book chapter which is partially or entirely copied from someone else's work. These are the offenses which we generally observe, right? Asking someone else to write a research paper for us, or thesis, write a thesis for us, project report, assignment, laboratory reports, etc. So these all are the academic misconducts which we have to be aware when we deal with the students. When we force someone, right, to include our name as a co-author in the research article and book, or book chapters, or any form of publication, then it's an academic misconduct. Removing the names of other contributors. I'm just summarizing all what we have discussed. Removing the names of other contributors and publishing the article under the sole authorship. Multi-posting, such as submitting one paper to many other journals, submitting one project proposals to multiple funding agencies, etc. Inappropriate citations. Let's say not citing the appropriate sources due to lack of awareness, or lack of time, or lack of laziness, ignorance. Sometimes we cite some of the people for their increased citation count, the other things. Sometimes we generate the fake plagiarism reports also to bluff the plagiarism checker for the university's mandates, right? So let's say what happens that what we do is we take a picture of a text and put it in a document and generate a plagiarism report. Since the text was framed in terms of picture, plagiarism checker may not be able to detect, right? So pasting text as a snapshot and running it through the plagiarism software. Now, in that case, a plagiarism tool may not detect this, and then it will go through. Now, this is called a flake plagiarism report generation, right? So this is also academic misconduct. Generally, students do that, right? I have seen this. I've seen the students doing with me, right? So sometimes researchers, they fabricate the graphs, results, tables, surveys, numbers, statistics by self-judgment without performing actual work, experiments, simulation studies, field surveys, anything. They just fabricate the data without doing any work, right? So this is also a type of academic misconduct which will result towards the plagiarism and other things. Reusing self-published work from previously submitted grant proposals or research papers, presenting the translated work from the original language to another language without citing the sources, right? All these were the offenses. Now, similarity index and consequences. Now, similarity index, that means what is the percentage of a text. Now, this excludes figures and charts and diagrams and other things. Okay, this is just a text similarity index. So let's say it's 0 to 10%. There won't be any penalty because it's natural. Some sort of percentage would be definitely, when we write it, it would be definitely copied. Now, let's say if it is 10 to 30%, they may ask for a revision and resubmit and bring it down below 10%. Generally, I go with 10%. Some of the people will say 20%, which is fine. Some of the people will say 15%, which is also fine. I have an understanding of 10%, nearby that, maybe 10, 12, 13, 14, 15%. So nearby that, I'm comfortable. 30 to 50% is a serious case. We may be asked to withdraw the complete manuscript, and sometimes they may bear us from submitting the future scripts for a year, right? And 1 year or 3 years, or maybe it depends, right? Or if it's a student's case detected in the report, assignments, anywhere, there could be a penalty of degradation of 1 grade or give a fail grade, right? So this kind of things can be done. If it is higher than 50%, we may be barred from submitting the scripts for 3 years. or it could be a fail grade also. So it depends on the disciplinary action committee how they look at these cases, and depends on what is their criteria for this percentages. Now, some of the cases for faculties, okay, let's say if it is a serious case, let's say greater than 30%, they may impose a penalty of demotion also. Let's say if you are on a current grade, any current grade, they will impose a penalty of demotion also. So they may demote, or they may stop the future increments. Right? If it's a PhD student, if there are any supervisors who are guiding the PhD students, they may not allow us to guide the PhD student for 2 to 3 years. Now, it is a direct impact on the professional growth. If they stop guiding from the PhD student because of the plagiarism, then there is a direct impact and delayed in the professional growth. There's both of them. Sometimes we may be bad from submitting the scripts for a year or 2 or 3, right? Sometimes it is very severe, then we may be fired from a job also if the current organization is very strict about these cases. Correct? So these are the cases these are some of the severe consequences of plagiarism for the faculties, right? So generally bring down the similarity index below 10%, use Turnitin or maybe any other plagiarism checker. We have to be very careful about the copyright infringements on images, right? When we use any image, we have to draw it at our own frame, and then we have to put our contributions, modify it based on our understanding, and cite the original source. If we want to reuse it, we have to pay the uh, reusage charges, image reusage charges with a license, with a written license for a reusage, right? Mostly review papers will reuse some of the figures, so we have to pay the image reusage charges, and then we have to ask for a written permission that we can reuse or not. Correct? Some of the common tips to eschew or to eliminate the plagiarisms are always paraphrase followed by the citations, right? So whenever we want to use anything, we paraphrase it and we cite all the sources nicely. So that will help us to overcome the plagiarism, right? So cite, if we are using any image, let's say this image is taken from this particular source of a paper, and the paper was open accessed, right? So it's under CC by 4.0 licensing in a public domain. We can use it, and we have to give the attribute here. We have to give the credit to a particular author. So in that way, we can overcome this problem. So this is how we can cite them here, right? If there is a quoted material, we have to quote and cite the original source. Now, the madam was asking right here that, so now this is something different, but who was asking, ma'am? There was one ma'am was asking about this.
Sir, Amrita.
Yeah, Amrita ma'am. So your answer to your question starts here. So see, citing the sources in PPT, that is extremely important, right? I mean, indirectly it will answer you. So let's say whenever I create any slide, any PPT, and I present it, I must cite the sources in PPT itself. So let's say these all are the sources of information I have cited here. Look at this, right? So now, as you're saying, there were some PPTs which you want to use, correct? Now you can go to the bottom citations and cite these sources. Right? So yeah, so otherwise there is a difficulty, correct? And we should not use the PPTs which are not citing any sources, because it's not a mature state of presentation which was given by that particular presenter, right? So we should not reach those kind of slides also. They are not authenticated. So see, look at this. Any
If the author of the research paper and the author of the PPT are same, and none of the sources have been mentioned, then what should we do in that case?
that should not happen here. See, ma'am, right now I'm presenting here. So this is a figure taken by my own paper. I still cite it. You understood, no, ma'am? See,
Yes, sir.
yeah, because that's again no carelessness. So let's say I'm presenting my own material. So what? I have to cite that paper, right? So see, this is my own paper, my own figure, but still I'm citing my own paper which we have presented few years back. So the person who is interested, that's the idea of citing in the PPT. So the person who is interested in reading and citing the PPTs, he or she can go to those citations and cite the original sources from the information is taken. See, citing the PPT is not a source. Citing the material which is presented in PPT, that's the original source that has to be cited. Correct, no? So this is called an indirect citation. We have to go with a direct citation. We have to identify who is the source from where this information is taken. Correct. So mostly if you find an advanced researcher, no, if you go with any advanced researcher, he will not do this. He will always cite his own paper. He will disclose all the sources unless he forgot. Forgot one or two sources he may forget, but he'll be at that state of maturity when he presents all the sources whichever he is referring. Minute source he will start and cite this. He will even start from there only. He'll double check all the citations. See, if you look at this anywhere on the PPT, none of them, mostly, no, all the sources are cited right now, except I forgot on somewhere. That could be another case. Miss on a human error. That's another one. But this is where we're going to do. So now look at this. If I use a diagram, correct, I have to set my own paper. I have to cite my own paper here. Correct, no? So if someone is interested in taking this PPT and taking this material in their paper, right? So they have to go and cite here, not the PPT, because citing the PPT doesn't increase the impact factor for a journal, right? But citing a research paper will increase the impact factor for a journal and give an appropriate credit to them. So that's the idea. Now it could be done maybe in different ways, such as, let's say, superscripts, numbers, or you can cite in brackets also. It's up to you how you want to cite, right? In PPT, how you want to cite, they're different. Some of the people will write the name and short title. That is also okay, correct? How you want to cite, that's up to you. Generally, I cite by the numbers, so you can go down and check the number. If there is a quoted material on the site, ma'am, we have to cite those directly so that the interested readers can go to the particular reference and then refer it, right? Some of the ideas or tips. Always we have to differentiate our ideas from others, right? So always reference and cite them, cite the sources to avoid the plagiarism. Identify and note down all the sources when we are writing a paper or something, right? So later we may not forget it if we have noted down all the sources. Then just the citation has to be, citations have to be given. Once we have noted all the sources, we have to just frame the citation and give it. Plan our time nicely, because see, generally the novel writing demands time, as it requires searching the sources, reading them, making notes, thinking, translate them into our own ideas, write the drafts, multiple revisions. So it takes a lot of time. So somehow, somewhere we miss it. So we may have to plan the time, and we have to be patientful, and then you have to consistently keep going. In the course of this, our supervisor can help. Like, so we have to keep in touch with our supervisor or our colleagues or our collaborators in regular fashion, and we have to keep, always two brains are better than one, right? So we may miss it. So always two brains are always better than one. We may miss it, and others can point out our mistakes, and then we can overcome those troubles. Okay, so avoid secrets. Always be honest. Don't be afraid if there are any mistakes. Ma'am, we are going to put these recordings in a public domain. Is that okay? Your voice will go in a public domain. Is that fine, Amrita, ma'am?
Yes, sir, no issue.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So don't be afraid. If we don't be afraid if we have to admit something sooner. If we identify there is a case of plagiarism, we can admit it up in the front and write it to the journal that this part looks like a plagiarized part, and then I admit it. So that could be the lesser trouble. Admit the mistakes and start working on a solution. We should not wait till someone comes and say that there was a mistake, right? So, and generally developing the reading habit will help, developing the writing habit will help. So we learn more by reading the research, scientific papers, besides gaining the insights into the various topics, correct? So we have to keep reading it. That will give us a next age in writing. Reading followed by the writing, reading followed by the writing, paraphrasing and other things. So this will give us help. This will help us to overcome the plagiarism case. If you're not sure whether we need to reference it a particular source or not, always let's reference it, or always let's cite it. So that will eliminate the confusion. If if our plagiarized content or case is exposed, we gotta admit it as soon as we can, and then we have to find out the solutions, because the remodeling won't help here because it's already been exposed. Unless there is a gentle case, such as unintentional case or something. But if it's an intentional case, we have to admit it and transform our thoughts and start looking at a solution. We should not wait until it's exposed by someone else. So that's another one, right? So we have to keep working on the remedies. For the instructions to the students, we have to ask them to employ multi-stage writing process, right? We have to direct them to demonstrate the work as they progress through the writing process. Continuous reporting is expected from them. And if there are cases of accidental plagiarism with them or intentional plagiarism, both the cases we have to identify as a supervisor or as a guide or for them, because generally they may miss out. So it's our job to identify them and ask them to revise it, eliminate them, right? So that's the basic idea. And during the gathering and planning phase, we gotta instruct them to do a thorough and detailed planning before they even start writing. So we have to instruct them to gather the required literature sources, note the respective sources, and later when they write it, cite them, everything, right? So we have to expect them to frame a comprehensive blueprint of a research paper or a thesis, right? And analyze the content before they get started even, right? So we have to make sensitize them, we have to make them aware about the plagiarism. So they have to analyze the entire content even before they start. That is there anything you're going to copy, right? So once they are aware, they will not copy, they will try to overcome all these things if they are aware of it. So it's our job to make them aware of it. Instruct the students to integrate our suggestions and comments when they revise the draft. First draft, they may come with a bit copy, which is okay, but then we have to sensitize them, train them, make them aware, and then ask them to revise everything, eliminate all the cases of the plagiarism. It should not go through, right? We have to encourage them to produce a significant contribution in the direction of enhancing the writing quality and plagiarism elimination, right? We have to mark drafts with the numbers and adequate sequence numbers with logical names, so that when student progresses, when they revise the drafts, we try to compare that what's your progress in the direction of enhancing the quality, eliminating the plagiarism compared to the previous draft. Correct, no? So, and we have to instruct them straight to cut down the plagiarized content, paragraphs, lines, sentences, diagrams, equations, music, videos, data, whatnot, everything, right? So that's our job to come through this. So mostly this can be overcome during the editing stage. We have to employ last minute review process, which will enable the students to catch the errors. If there are any errors, we have to ask them to come up with a last minute review process, correct? And we have to instruct the students to restate the sentences more concisely and teach them the paraphrasing skills. And for the research papers, we have to guide them, and we have to ask them to do the final check. If there is any quoted material that you're forgetting to cite and quote, if there are any paraphrased passages that are not cross-referenced or maybe not cited well, we would ask them to do a final check before the submission to a journal. Generally, perform extensive peer review and multiple revision citations, right? That will eliminate this kind of plagiarism cases. And always we have to assign the topics to them, or they can come up with few topics and we can pick up, but we should not allow a last minute topic change. If let's say there is a research topic, or maybe if there is an assignment or anything, we should not allow a last minute topic change. There is no rolling back, because when we allow a last minute topic change, they are going to copy and they are going to come and submit a copied material. That's what the practice is, right? So generally we employ rewrite option very frequently to enhance the writing quality and eliminate the plagiarism. So generally we should teach them the culture of earned trust, right? So they have to build the trust, and some of the precautions that we have to be taking care, that we should be always original, we should respect the novelty. Paraphrasing we should do, followed by the citations and referencing. We have to always quote, cite the quotes, cite our own material to avoid the self-plagiarism, provide the references, acquired writing permission, written permissions, licenses for using the photographs, data, pictures, graphs, charts, music, or pay the reusage charge, etc. Right? And that's all I have for a day.